Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Elmhurst City Hall. This is Monday, March 16th. We are meeting as a committee of the whole to continue our ongoing review of the 2009-2010 budget. I'd ask the clerk to please call the roll of established quorum.
Regan, absent. Gudenkauf.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Shea.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Rose, absent. Gow.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
Moriarty.
Here.
Nybo.
Here.
Sapaniak, absent. Morley.
Here.
Lumnicki.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
11 present, 3 absent.
11 present, 3 absent. We do have a quorum. Okay, very good. As you can see on your agenda, Mr. Borchert laid out for us some targets of things we wanted to get done. I don't know if this agenda has been redone, Mr. Borchert, or not, but it turns out that we are right on time according to this. I don't know if they changed this to reflect where we were, or if we were just able to get that much done the last time we met. Mr. Borchert lays out a kind of an aggressive schedule for us so that we can get our work done in a timely fashion. I remind the council that this, Mr. Borchert will as well in a moment, remind you that this work must be done by this council before we go out of business, for lack of a better term, and pass the budget before us. We're going to start tonight with a presentation by the library. Folks are here. Rosella Walsh is here, the president of the library board, and Marilyn Boria here, who is, as you all know, our chief librarian and runs our organization and our effort over there, and I might add does a fantastic job. I always say that at the end after you guys are done, so I'll let you. Mr. Borchert, did you want to say something before we?
We just would repeat, we will begin by reviewing that portion of the budget which begins on page 180 of the budget book, which is the library budget. The library is operated and policy set and overseen by the library board.
Right.
The head librarian is here, Marilyn Boria, will introduce the budget, and the president. The city of Elmhurst must approve the tax levy for the library. The city of Elmhurst typically provides an overview of the budget. However, the budget itself is the responsibility and authority of the Elmhurst Library Board, and Marilyn Boria and the library board are here, and the president, Marilyn Boria. I believe you're going to introduce the president?
No, I'll introduce the mayor. Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yes?
My notes indicate that we did not complete public works at our last meeting, that we stopped at the end of the forestry review and didn't address electrical, rubbish disposal, municipal buildings, central maintenance equipment, and public benefits.
Well, I thought we had, Mr. Borchert. I thought we had.
We had a very extensive forestry discussion.
We began the budget review with Public Works shortly before 10 and ended around 11. It was an hour. We weren't going page by page. I thought we had concluded the questions for the Public Works Department and Director. Certainly if there's questions for the budget officer and the Public Works Director, we'll pick those up. Right.
It was my recollection that, as Mr. Borchert said, there was a presentation on the entire Public Works budget. There were a number of questions about various line items within that, and you're right, we did spend a lot of time on the forestry part, but the actual presentation relative to those sections was, from a agenda point of view, concluded. But as Mr. Borchert said, we can circle back to them at virtually any time. Okay, but since we have the library board president and the librarian sitting in the seat right now, I think we can go ahead and proceed with that item. So,
okay. Good evening. It is a pleasure to meet with you to discuss the library's budget. I am Rose Walsh, president of the Library Board of Trustees. I would like to begin by introducing the other trustees who are here this evening. Ingrid Beckton and Susan Sadowski. Library Director Marilyn Boria also is here. Before we answer any questions, I would like to briefly highlight what has happened at the library in the past year. As you know, last October we celebrated 5 years in our new building, and it has been a very busy time. The library averages 10,000 visitors every week. This is reflected in a 4% increase in circulation during the first 10 months of this fiscal year. By April 30th, the library will have circulated more than 1.4 million items. This is 5 times the national average for per capita circulation. In the past 10 months, we have seen double-digit increases in use of our meeting and program rooms. During that time, the library has presented 840 programs for the public, and community groups use these rooms for 320 meetings and programs. One of our greatest successes has been in service to our youngest customers. During the day, all of our story times for preschoolers are filled to capacity. After school, children from throughout the community use the library as a homework center. Last summer, more than 5,000 children participated in our summer reading clubs, an all-time record. We are particularly grateful to the Friends of the Library and many of the businesses in town for their support of this annual program. The Library Board was very pleased with the results of the 2008 Elmhurst Citizen Survey. We learned that 90% of Elmhurst households have library cards. 94% of Elmhurst families use the library every year. 97% of respondents rated library services in general excellent or good. 98% rated programming for kids excellent or good. While these responses are overwhelmingly positive, we cannot stand still in a time of rapid change. We want to ensure that all the residents of Elmhurst get the greatest possible benefit from the library, both now and in the future. To that end, in October, the board approved a new strategic plan for the library, which was developed with considerable public input. This entire document is available on our website. Let me just highlight a couple of points. One of our goals is to be an active participant in promoting economic development in Elmhurst. Another is to increase our presence in the community by networking with local organizations and businesses. And we will offer programming, services, and materials for Elmhurst residents to achieve personal, professional, and academic success. One of our first major accomplishments of the strategic plan was the launch of our new website 2 weeks ago. We are calling it EPL 24/7 to highlight all of the library services and collections that are available to residents from a computer anywhere in the world. Please visit it when you have time and let us know what you think. One of our major expenditures this past year was to replace all of the computers in the building in order to ensure that we can continue to provide high-quality computing for both public and staff. This coming year, we plan to upgrade our internet connections to meet the ever-growing demand and to rebuild the IT infrastructure in the building to handle the increased volume of use. In conclusion, let me remind you that we are in the midst of our first annual Elmhurst Reads program, featuring the works of renowned writer Joyce Carol Oates. After a series of programs over the past 6 weeks, Ms. Oates will be visiting Elmhurst this Thursday to discuss her works with residents. If you do not already have tickets for this evening and this exciting event, please let us know and we will provide them. Thank you for helping us to make the library such a successful resource for the community. We could not do this without your support. On behalf of the board, I would like to thank the mayor, city council, as well as the city manager, and the rest of the city staff who help us on a daily basis. Before you tonight, you have our budget, which includes not only our operating expenses, but also the funds needed for repayment of our building bonds. We welcome your comments and questions. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Marilyn, were you going to make any comments or just wait and see how the questions went? Okay. All right, you've heard from Rose Walsh, the president of the library board. Any questions on the budget that they presented to you or their services over there? Anything at all? Mr. Brand, Alderman Brand.
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation. As we all know, the library is very much utilized not only by our residents, but outside of Elmhurst residents as well. One of my main questions is in regard, on page 186, line item 1001 and 1002, which is pretty much from the standpoint of salaries and wages, full-time as well as part-time. As we've discussed already in the previous budget discussion, as well we'll be discussing tonight, these are tough times, and I did notice that there's approximately a 50,000 increase in full-time, as well as approximately an additional 50,000 in part-time for those two positions. I was wondering if you can speak to those as well as comment on if that is essential in these tough times.
That does not include any additional personnel. I mean, we are operating with the same staff next year that we have this year, We did want to add another librarian in the children's department, for tweens, kind of the middle school age. We are postponing that at least a year, if not longer, to see how the economic situation works out. We do merit-based pay increases every year. We don't have steps and we don't have automatic increases. So that money is to raise our minimum wage from $7.75 to $8 an hour, which is required by state law on July 1st, and to provide a pool for merit increases of about 3%.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Questions or comments of the library? Yes, sir. Mr.
Thank you,
Nybel.
Mr. Mayor. When we received our summary from the city manager, there were a list of modifications and policies that the city manager and the city staff has imposed throughout the city, it appears. Some of these are personnel-related policy changes or modifications, including a hiring review freeze and overtime restrictions, eliminating out-of-state conferences and travel. And then there's also a mention here of reduction in employee relations and training. Are these policies and modifications that also will apply to the library?
No. Under state law, the library board has the authority to set the policies for the library. So many of our policies differ from the city. We're open more days every year, of course, in the city because we're open Saturdays and Sundays. We pay at different rates than the city. So our policies differ in many ways from the cities. If you have something specific, I could maybe answer that, but they aren't the same.
Yeah, I mean, general policy on a hiring freeze. If
We plan to hire hire no one new this year. If someone leaves, we will replace that person because we have money in the budget to do it. But we are not adding any positions this year.
Yeah, I mean, here's my general question. I mean, if these policies and these modifications are good enough for our city, given these economic times, I'm wondering why these same restrictions and modifications aren't being put in place at the library.
Because we have the funds in our budget to do what we've just discussed.
Okay.
We don't have a budget shortfall. We are spending some of our reserve money this year. You'll notice we do have some reserves, and we are spending some of our reserve money this year. We think it's critical. During times of economic downturn, people turn to the public library. Our circulation in February was up 13%. The number of people that were in the library was up 10%. So for us to cut now would be a problem for people who are here to use the library and who need our services now more than they ever have. So we're going to try to maintain what we have and see how it goes. But we do have the money for the next year to do that.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you. Do you track what kind of users you get at the library? For instance, if you see an increase in users who are seeking job placement services and that sort of thing, is there a way that you are able to track what kind of specific information people are coming to the library for?
Actually, I just addressed that question. The American Library Association has a Washington office where we're looking for information for the stimulus package for libraries. And we don't track it. We didn't used to track it by the type of question that people asked. We have started in February to keep track. If we think a question, we don't ask people why they ask us a question, but if it's obviously a job-related question, we will mark that separately, so we'll still have the whole number, but we'll also be able to look at if we're helping someone we think find a job. I think a lot of the work in terms of helping people find a job happens at the computers. We have a lot of people who come in and apply for jobs. There are many, many jobs now where you have to apply online. There is no paper application. And if you don't have a computer at home or if you don't have a fast enough connection, people come to the library all the time, and our computer clerks spend a lot of time helping people, and they can tell by what's on the screen that the person is filling out a job application. We also help people find information for, about companies where they're going to apply for work, so that when they go for a job interview, if they're if they get an interview, or in their cover letter, they can say, you know, they can talk about what the company does. So I know we do that, and I know how people find, you know, apply for jobs online. But I don't have any really firm statistics yet on that.
Okay, very good. Yes, Alderman Moriarty and then Alderman Hiskin.
Yeah, Marilyn, I think you guys do an excellent job with the city's library here in Elmhurst. And I agree with your assessment that due to the economic times, you will see even more of an increase of the 10 to 15% of Elmhurst residences using the library and all of the services that you do provide. And if I can just also say, I think it would be, if you are looking to add in any services, job searching would be one of the new ideas that would be on the front line, just to be any of assistance to any of the people here in Elmhurst. But I do think you do a great job.
We do have a company that comes in, a non-for-profit, the Jewish Vocational Services in Lombard. They send someone over once a month for half-hour sessions, one morning a month, which helps people to improve their resume, get a resume together. And we would fill it up, but we didn't have much demand beyond that. Now we send people to Lombard because they don't come to the library often enough to meet the demand. So we do work with people on that also.
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
Mr. Hitchkin.
Marilyn Rose, I want to thank you for heading up the library/community center. 5 years ago, if we were to really think about how filled up those community rooms are, I've been to a number of different ones from the youth, actually with job expos and with seniors in neighborhoods. It's amazing how much use they get. So thank you for hosting our community. I think you're doing a great job, and I think it's essential in this time to, I hear you're upgrading the computers and you're upgrading the infrastructure. It is essential because people, if they are out of a job, they do go to the library. There's a comfort there. There's a peace and a solace there to go get something done, and we owe that to the people in the community who need that right now. And then on the another note, boy, oh boy, that first floor is teeming every time I'm there. That's where the children's, the youth is, and if you ever have a chance, just walk through it. It's pretty amazing to see 70 to 200 kids sitting down and actually somewhat being quiet, not entirely quiet, but reading and looking at books, and they know this area. They know what part this part over here has this part over here. Here's a reading room, and here's the storytelling room. So I think it's a great asset to our community, and really, I mean it. It's turned into a library/community center. So thank you for providing that environment for us.
Okay, very good. Alderman Gudenkauf, did you have something? Question? Comment?
Yeah, so, thank you. Something you said about the stimulus package just triggered a question. Are there specific programs that you know of that are in the federal stimulus package that are targeting libraries, and what are you doing to kind of...
Well, at this point, most of them are shovel-ready projects, which we don't have that anymore, thank heavens. So that right now, that's the big thing, and there are a lot of libraries in the state that have shovel-ready projects. Other than that, they're still sorting through. I think the answer to your question is nobody knows yet, but we're still, the Illinois Library Association is kind of on top of this, working with the state. So if there's opportunities available, we will certainly avail ourselves of them.
Okay, very good. Anyone else? Mr. Graham.
Yeah, just another quick question back to the salaries. Upon my request, Marilyn Gesson, and thank you, Marilyn, for the quick turnaround, provided myself as well as everybody else the number of employees within the different departments of the city. The one that's not on here is the library. Can you speak to a rough estimate of how many full-time and part-time employees the library has?
Yes. The full-time is 26 people. That's not rough, that's exact. The part-time is rough. It's about 125 people. But, well, we're open 72 hours a week, 356 days a year. A lot of the part-time people work 15 hours a week, so it's not I mean, they're not all 37, you know, they're not all, a couple of them work 30 hours, but most of them are under half-time, so.
Thank you.
Okay? All right, anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, very good. Well, I think I can wrap this up by reiterating some of what you heard already, which is that speaking as myself, as the mayor, I'm sure I can speak for the council and for my friends and neighbors in my community, that we are very, very proud of the Elmhurst Public Library. I'll tell you a story that I didn't feel like telling last year because it was a little too current to the event, but my brother Larry grew up in Elmhurst and went to college in Des Moines, Iowa, and never returned to Elmhurst as a full-time resident. Shortly before he passed away, he was in Elmhurst, and we went downtown on an errand, and we were driving back to my house, and we drove by the library, and he literally did one of these in the front seat of the car. What's that? What is that building there? And I said, oh, that's the library. That's kind of nice. You know, I'm very proud of the library. He made me turn around in the old library parking lot and take him back and get out. He wanted to go in and see the library. And that, I think, is kind of a typical story of people's reaction to that building. When you're running 5 times, now think of this, somewhere in the United States is a city of almost exactly the same size we are, and their public library, for every one person that enters their public library, we have 5 enter ours. And that gives you a sense of not only, A, how good our library is on the one hand, but on the other hand, what a demand for the library services there are from the citizens of Elmhurst. They're there, when you unlock the door in the morning, there's people standing there waiting to get in. They are hungry for the services that you provide, and that's very evident. So I think you just do a terrific job. A crackerjack job is a term that kind of started coming out of my mouth in the last year. I'll share with you a crackerjack job of fulfilling the needs of our community. Let me ask you retrospectively, Marilyn, you and I had this conversation in exactly the same place about 4 or 5 years ago when the library was relatively new. I remember some very interesting discussions. I won't call them debates or arguments because we were all, quite frankly, guessing. Well, I was guessing. I think you had some facts that you were dealing with that you got from the library associations and people who knew about these things, about the number of computer. Remember at that time that people were saying, well, the internet's going to make books obsolete. Nobody's going to go to a library in 5 years. That, you know, if you go back to 1998, 99, that's how people were talking. And so then it all had to be computers, and then we realized that there was some North Shore library that put in all these computers, and then all the residents got computers at home and they didn't need them anymore. So I guess kind of, since I had this opportunity, maybe not so much to the current budget, but are you comfortable with the decisions that were made in terms of computer stations and their use? Did you hit it just about right? Or were you too low or too high? Or how did all those kind of macro things play out?
Well, it's a little self-serving, but things worked out pretty well, we think. We have a computer lab on the 2nd floor. We have 30 computers in the main area. We have some teen computers. We also have 15 computers in the lab. And whenever we're busy and we don't have a class in the lab, or we don't have a group using the lab, we open the doors. So on Sundays, so we'll have 45 computers in use. We'll have 50 computers upstairs in use on a Sunday afternoon within 15 minutes of opening. I mean, we never schedule anything on Sundays. And one of the problems with our meeting rooms is that we're so busy sometimes that after schools from Monday through Thursday, from 2:30 to 5:30, we don't allow any meetings in the meeting rooms because we simply don't have the parking and can't handle the people who are already in the building, much less opening up the meeting rooms, which is kind of a shame. If we had more parking, we would be busier. I know and we have 30 staff spots off-site. So the 135 spots that we have in the library are busy lots of the time. So I think it's worked out pretty well. There isn't a lot that we would change, anything big, really. Well,
okay. Thank you very much. Again, on behalf of the council, you just make us so proud. It's a delight to go over there. I'm not a person, I don't have a lot of time to be reading books. My wife is there once a week, 2 books in, 2 books out.
I see her.
As you know,
Actually,
if
I
you look
see
at
a
my
lot of the
records,
aldermen there, too.
I haven't checked a book out of the library in years, but on the rare occasion when I need to do some research and I need to know something, or I want to look up something that was in the newspaper 6 months ago or 6 years ago or recently about 40 years ago, I go to the library and I usually can get my hands on my information in a very quick order. And that's partially because of the skill of the people that you have working there in periodicals who can help me do that. So please share that compliment with them.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your time here this evening. And to the other board members, thank you for being here tonight. Okay, Mr. Borchard?
We move to the Historical Museum.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. Berghager will move forward, please. It's on pages 158 through 161 of the budget book. And President of the Heritage Center, Val Stewart, is with us.
Okay. Mayor Marcucci and members of the Elmhurst City Council and City Administration. I'm Val Stewart, President of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you briefly about the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation and our progress to date. As you know, the foundation was formed a little over a year ago by the merger of the Elmhurst Historical Commission and the Elmhurst Historical Museum Foundation. Since then, our board has expanded to 20 members with a maximum of 21. If I may, I'd like to introduce the members of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation Board who are here with us tonight. They are Linda Fougeroux, Janet Hodge, Kathy Jordan, Kathy Siegert, Vince Spaeth, and also our Director of Development, Jonathan Hand. Our foundation's mission is to stimulate support for local history and the museum through advocacy, education, and fundraising. We have been busy. Just recently, we held our second annual board retreat and spent a Saturday morning developing our goals for the coming year. Our most important goal is to increase public awareness of the museum and its exhibits and programs. And in that regard, we hosted a very successful jazz brunch in February to showcase the museum's newest exhibit, Elmhurst Jazz, celebrating an American art form in Elmhurst. This wonderful new and original exhibit celebrating the 75th anniversary of Downbeat magazine, which by the way is published here in Elmhurst, and the Elmhurst College Jazz Festival. The exhibit runs through May 24th. Again, to highlight the exhibit, we will host a reception for donors and special guests on Thursday, April 23rd from 5 to 7 p.m. We hope that every member of the City Council will be able to attend to see the wonderful exhibit. So please keep an eye out for your formal invitation. Again, that's April 23rd, which is a Thursday, from 5 to 7. And of course, we are currently planning our semi-annual gala for Saturday, November 7th. Our hope is to center this event around the debut of the Churchville one-room schoolhouse. Again, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak tonight and for your continued support of the Elmhurst Historical Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Val. I want to also thank the board of the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation. It's a pleasure to work with the board in its role as an advocate and fundraiser, and the commitment of the board is evident in the 2009-2010 budget, which includes a grant of $35,000 to meet 1/3 of the salary of the museum development director, as well as a portion of the museum's exhibit expenses this coming year. Now, the 2009-2010 budget begins on page 158 of your budget book. It provides for the museum to be staffed 7 days per week with gallery hours during 6 of those days. Core services to the public are included within this framework, taking place mornings, afternoons, and evenings as necessary, both on-site at the museum as well as at off-site locales. This includes school and scout programs, reference services, specially arranged guided tours, exhibits, various other public programs, and marketing and communications. But the budget also imposes critical limitations on all of those services. Perhaps most crucial is the absence of one of the museum's full-time personnel. One of 5 or 20% of the full-time staff. This position, the Community Programs Coordinator, has been vacant since September and is responsible for public programs, school services, and public outreach at the Historical Museum. The budget calls for the position to be carried vacant next year, making it problematic to maintain effective programmatic partnerships with local schools and such organizations as Elmhurst Park District, Elmhurst College, Elmhurst Public Library, and others within the community. The impact is also evident with the Churchville one-room schoolhouse. The budget provides for the final phase of restoration, which will begin soon, and is supported by 3 state grants totaling almost $200,000. But operations at the site beginning this fall, a site listed on the National Register of Historic Places, will be limited to pilot work. The site will come fully online only as resources are available for quality interpretive experiences. Steps have been taken to address these and other areas of budget reductions, including a shift of some core services from one position to others. Added volunteer assistance may also be helpful, although the Community Programs Coordinator, the unfilled position, served as the Museum Volunteer Coordinator. Another step is additional financial support of the Heritage Foundation and potential sponsorship support from within the community. But opportunities also accompany these challenges. I think next year will be a chance to continue to grow greater online presence for the Historical Museum. We'll also have the museum think of how to creatively continue integrating its exhibit program into a bigger and better attraction for residents as well as for visitors. And as we look to our strength, the work of the foundation and implementation of a formal development plan will take priority during the coming year. I want you to know on behalf of the foundation and on behalf of the Historical Museum, we appreciate your support and we look for your help during the next year. On the dais this evening, you should have found a copy of the museum's 2008 annual report. The report was delivered to the museum only today, and I'm happy to provide a copy to each of you. It will be distributed to donors and partners and other stakeholders within the next couple of weeks. This has been a very brief overview of the budget, but I'm happy to respond to any questions or comments that you may have this evening. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Alderman Brand.
Yes, thank you. As I've already commented on when the library was also presenting, these are tough times, so I apologize if I come across with some tough questions. In regards to the Historical Museum's budget, one of the biggest items that appeared to me was on page 159, line item 8023 under building improvements. I do understand that there's a detailed explanation stating that that is for the paving of the parking lot for the one-room schoolhouse. Again, referencing the times that we're in, is this something that is essential when we're considering cutting back on street improvements, et cetera, down the line in the city? Could something like this be delayed to the next year, which I also see is budgeted for $405,000 for the same line item?
Sure.
The $440,000 in the 2009-2010 budget includes approximately $60,000 for the parking lot rebuild at the schoolhouse, and the remainder is for the final phase of restoration work there. The parking lot is in a terrible state of disrepair. It hasn't been maintained over the past few years as the earlier phase of construction went on. And we do have an agreement with the owner of the parking lot to provide an operating parking lot there, not only for the schoolhouse, but also for use at the cemetery.
Yes, sir.
So if I may follow up, I do understand what the agreement has been with the one-room schoolhouse as well as the agreement with the cemetery from past information that has been passed on to us. My question, though, is something like the parking lot. I do know that we have been moving forward and we have put a lot of monies into the repairing of the schoolhouse, so it would be a piece of this community as well as for Bensonville. But is that piece, the parking lot piece, something that we could delay 1 year?
Well, I understand it's been delayed several years, and it's been evaluated by the city's Public Works Division, and it's been determined that the work is necessary.
Mr. Borchert?
As Mr. excuse me, as Mr. Berghager has indicated, the city has achieved a lease with the church that owns the property, and it's implied within that lease that upon completion of the one-room schoolhouse renovation and expansion, that the parking lot would be resurfaced. It's been actually the paving has been put off because of the delays with the one-room schoolhouse. It's capital, and in that regard, part of a project that has been targeted and is coming on board. It would be recommended that the paving go forward before it would need to be completely removed and replaced. It is, as Mr. Bergiger indicated, in poor shape. I think it could be patched and then resurfaced. And it's also the agreement with the Bensonville community that the parking lot and facility, once it's opened up, would be ready for public use.
With that, I thought I heard it was stated, though, that the one-room schoolhouse repairs would not be completed until the fall of this year. So I would think that we obviously wouldn't want to redo the parking lot until after those repairs are done. And that's why I was looking for something in our budget, because it is pretty much bare bones as it is presented to us, that we can possibly delay.
Scheduled to be paved late in the paving year and after the bulk of the exterior work is basically done. It's interior work, less demanding on the parking lot, but it would be coordinated such to follow the repairs at the one-room schoolhouse.
Thanks.
Alderman Gutenkauf.
I'd just like to follow up on the same capital line. So only $60,000 for the parking lot. That leaves a balance of $380,000 this year, and you're looking for another $405,000 next year. Could you give me a summary of what exactly those monies are going to cover?
Sure. This year, the $380,000 balance is targeted for the schoolhouse, and that's based on construction estimates and architectural fees for that project. The funding next year has been earmarked several years out for beginning architectural and engineering work for the Heritage Center concept.
So what exactly at the schoolhouse are you doing this year? Because I know you've been working on that for several years. Or is that what got postponed from the fiscal year that we're in right now?
The construction work that will be done at the schoolhouse this year, as Mr. Borchert mentioned, is primarily interior work. It does include the addition of a restroom off the west side or back side. So the bulk of that work is this addition. It includes water service, which does not exist at the site. The water service will be provided via Bensonville. It also includes new electrical service at the site and historic renovation and restoration of the interior fabric of the building.
A follow-up, please. But you don't have a community programs coordinator to run the programs in the schoolhouse. When do you project that those renovations would be done in the building?
We project that the renovations will be done late summer, early fall, and we're working with District 205 and other partners to begin some limited pilot programming next fall.
In a coordinated fashion.
I don't know that Alderman Gutenkauf was done. Were you done with your question?
I think I'm leading up to something, and that's that I'm kind of following up on Alderman Bram's concerns about what we're spending money on this year and what is potentially postponable. Is the building envelope sealed? Is the building physically stable at this point? And if so, if we're looking for ways that we're going to address this critical budget shortfall, I think that if the building is sealed and the building is stable and we're able to pave the parking lot, that our obligations to maintaining that property, at least in the short term, have been met, and that the programming hasn't started yet. And if we're concerned about adding additional expenses to the budget, that this additional programming is something that we need to be very aware of our ongoing obligation once we take it on. That if we don't do programming now and the building is stable, then perhaps this is something that we may need to consider postponing for yet another year.
I was going to state that there's, I think, 2 state grants that have been held to finish the interior renovation and the providing of the washroom facilities, the sewer and water for the facility. Elmhurst has received a partnering sponsorship from the village of Bensonville and beyond the village with the Park District, I believe, and also the library. But the village itself is financing the sewer extension and the water service down Church Road for the property in return for being a sponsor of the one-room schoolhouse and to allow the Bensonville community to have sponsorship level ability to reserve one-room schoolhouse for their activities. Alderman Gutenkopf is correct in identifying the staffing reduction, which is a part of the general fund issue, and in holding positions that are vacant until the revenues return. But I believe the museum, the Heritage Center is providing a lot of value service in its limited capacity, and the school community is waiting for this one-room schoolhouse to come back online for whatever they can allow District 205 kids access for their educational experience. So it would be my desire that albeit limited, that the one-room schoolhouse with the investment put into it be allowed to be utilized as soon as possible, and hopefully later this fall.
I'd also add that District 205 is going to hire its own teacher for the schoolhouse to teach District 205 classes. So we will, at the museum, be committed to do limited programming, limited pilot programming, and we'll also be booking and managing the site, but District 205 would be presenting programs to its schools. The expectation is that museum staff will be presenting interpretive programs to the non-205 schools. And there are actually 3 state grants totaling almost $200,000 in that balance of the $380 that is earmarked for the final restoration.
205's got plenty of grants.
Yes.
I didn't hear your comment, Mr. Borchard.
We also are holding a District 205 Foundation for Excellence grant for supportive materials at the school. That's about $14,000. And then District 205 is holding a grant of, I believe, about $60,000. It's been held for about 8 or 9 years, perhaps, for the final work on the house, on the schoolhouse. This would be to pay final costs of that.
So did you just say that of that $380,000, $300,000 of that is state grants? Is that what you just said?
No, just under $200,000.
Oh, so $200,000 of the $380,000 is a state grant funding. So $180,000 of that money is coming out of our capital improvement budget.
That's correct.
Anyone else? Mr. Bram?
Yeah, One other question, and once again, back to salaries and wages. On page 158, line item 1001 and 1002, it seems like what is projected currently, or what is projected in regards to the salaries and benefits for the Historical Museum is approximately $560,000 for salaries and benefits alone. Alderman Nybo stated earlier in regards to what was told by us by City Manager Borchert of not increasing staff. And I did notice that for the museum, there is, even though small, an increase, or at least a proposed increase of 1 part-time staff, when I thought that our policy was actually to stay at where we're at, status quo in all departments. Could someone also speak to that, please?
The budget proposal does not propose additional staff at the Historical Museum this year. It proposes carrying 1 full-time position unfilled and carrying 1 part-time position unfilled.
Could I make a request then if Director Marilyn Gaston could speak to the information that was provided? Because what was provided was 09-010 proposed 7 part-time, which previously was 6 part-time. Am I misreading this or misunderstanding it? Okay. Okay, thank you.
And to my knowledge, we were budgeted for 7 part-time positions this past year, and 1 of those has been unfilled.
Okay.
Has that been unfilled all year for this entire past budget cycle?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Has that been unfilled for this entire year past?
No.
Okay, so you lost that person somewhere along the line and
Yes.
you didn't fill it. All right.
And we had a staffing reorganization at the Historical Museum this year where we actually had a part-time position eliminated. We had a full-time position eliminated. Other positions were created out of those to reorganize the staff in order to meet the needs of the direction of the Historical Museum. But our numbers have not changed from that.
Okay.
4 full-time that will be going into the 09-10 year, and 7 part-time.
One of which will remain unfilled.
Yes, 1 unfilled.
Then that clarifies things. Because what was presented was exactly that. In the previous budget year was 4 full-time, 6 part-time. Proposed, what I have written here is 4 full-time, 7 proposed. But if what you're stating is 1 of which will be unfilled, that explains the discrepancy.
Okay.
So thank you.
Okay? All right. Alderman Moriarty.
You know, if I can just follow up on that, on the line item of 451-1001, why is it an increase of 50,000 from the 08-9 to the 9-10 projected? If there's...
In 08-09, we carried a number of positions unfilled for a portion of the year. You'll see the 08-09 budget was $311,000. And at the end of the year, we're coming in significantly under that at $255,000 because we held off filling several of those positions during the course of the year.
Okay, and so we're going to, I guess, fill them this year is what you're stating, or no? You're going to have a hiring freeze
The
with
big
that?
position that's now filled is the development director. That is a position partially funded by the foundation and designed to raise revenue. So this is an investment in the future, an investment in creating a revenue stream, which is part of the overall strategic mission of the Heritage Center. That's the position that was empty, filled, but filled with the purpose of creating revenue, and filled with, I believe it's 1/3 paid for by the foundation itself.
So that position was budgeted for a greater portion of the year than it was actually filled. It was not filled until November, I believe. We had a similar situation with another full-time position. Our curator of exhibits was filled in October, but had been budgeted for, I believe, 3 additional months earlier in the year. And the review and recruitment process simply took longer than we had expected.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Mr. Morley.
The development position that was discussed at great length last year, just hearing that you have filled it, can you give us a little more information on that? Who has filled that position, and when do you think you'll, the hope with the development position was to raise funds. When do you think you'll start seeing some of that?
Well, our development director is here this evening, Jonathan Hand. I'd ask you to stand, Jonathan. We were very pleased to hire Jonathan in November, as I said, and Jonathan has been working with the development committee of the foundation board as we pull together a comprehensive development plan. That plan is still in committee. It has not been rolled out to the entire board at this point, but a large component of it this year will focus on a major dinner dance auction type event to take place November 7th at Drury Lane Theater. And that will be a major component of the annual fund. At the same time, through our development plan, we're establishing and nurturing communication and relationship with other potential donors. And as I said, the development plan is in process. It has been in process over the past few months with our foundation board. It's still in committee, but we expect it to begin to come out of committee within the next couple months, and certainly have more information about the development plan at that point.
Thank you.
Okay. When you talk about this gala, is that kind of an ongoing we had a gala recently at the Westin in Lombard, I recall, correct?
Yes.
This is the same kind of thing. Focus on community attention on the Heritage Foundation. Get a lot of people together in the room. I know that we presented my recollection was the first Alban Bates Award, right?
That's correct.
Now, that evening was designed as a fundraiser. Did you raise funds?
That event raised about $64,000, and as we looked at our development plan, we went back to our strength. That was a strength of the museum. That was a wildly successful event for the foundation. So that is integrated in our development plan as one of the initial steps. And out of that we'll also include the Alban Bates Award as in the past. That event that was done earlier was in the autumn of 2007, recognizing the 50th anniversary of the Historical Museum. At this point, we're really looking at the opportunity to do that type of event maybe once every 2 years, not to repeat it on an annual basis, but to do it once every 2 years.
Okay. And the 60+ thousand was net, not your gross receipts for the evening, was net?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Yes, Alderman Goodman.
I have a question about the professional services line, which is 451-3052. Can you just tell me what kinds of services you're contracting out that are encompassed by that?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
The professional services line. Sorry.
What page?
Oh, page 158.
Sure. That includes primarily design and printing for things like calendars of events, posters, a lot of our marketing material. We've pulled back this year on some of that because we were a little bit slower than we had expected to have our curator of exhibits come on board. And so you'll see that there was a decrease to date in the amount expended, although the final number for the 2008-09 estimate of $1,000 I believe will be a little low because we have begun to spend a little more out of that account. But it's primarily marketing and communications services.
Okay, anyone else? Graham?
The question that's asked every year, and I thought someone would have already asked it, but has not, is how many visitors has the Historical Museum seen this past year?
This past year, we had just under 13,000 visitors.
That's definitely an increase from last year, I believe, right?
Actually, it was a bit of a drop from the previous year, and we attribute that to the fact that our community programs coordinator position was unfilled here for the past 6 months. We hope to rebound next year. I did bring along some figures just to give you a benchmark to weigh that 13,000 visitor figure at the Historical Museum. Some of the other museums in the area are similar. Some are quite different. The Arlington Heights Historical Museum has approximately 12,000 visitors with 10 full-time and part-time employees. Aurora Historical Society had 10,000 visitors with 7 full-time and part-time employees. Chicago History Museum has just over 200,000 visitors with 132 full-time and 13 part-time employees. The Des Plaines Historical Center has just over 10,000 visitors with 4 full-time and 3 part-time employees. Napier Settlement had about 130,000 visitors with 24 full-time and 29 part-time employees. And West Chicago City Museum had 6,000 visitors with 3 full-time and 1 part-time employee. So I hope those numbers give some context to our figures.
Mr. Gow?
Do you break that figure down in terms of, say, how many school children come in, or is that a separate category?
That figure includes school children, and last year we had between 2,500 and 3,000 school children. In Elmhurst, District 205 includes local history as part of the second grade social studies curriculum, and I believe we touched, if not every second grade class in Elmhurst, either at the museum or at a school. We reached just about each of those classes, as well as in quite a few others.
Okay. Can I ask a follow-up on that exact point? Do you have an outreach to the parochial schools in town? By way of example, I'm trying to think. We have several parochial grade schools in town. We have Visitation, we have Immaculate Conception, we have Emmanuel Lutheran.
Timothy Christian.
Timothy Christian Grade School.
Mm-hmm. We reach out to all of those schools. I know within the last few weeks we've done programs for Emmanuel Lutheran, and I know recently we also did some for Timothy Christian.
Okay. All right. So their needs, I've always, when we talk about schools in town, I've always felt a need to recognize, you can't, if they don't want to participate, that's their business. The same with public schools. You provide these programs, obviously, like in the case of the one-room schoolhouse, it sounds like they're getting a little anxious to get on with it out there in the fall, which is good. But, you know, I can't insist that you have a program for these schools. I can't insist that you make it available. That's all. I want to make sure you make it available to everybody. If you're dealing with second graders, a second grader is a second grader, whether they're going to Hawthorne or IC. So that's my point.
Well, and for public school kids, it's very important that our programs meet the curriculum needs of the district, right. And that the experience at the Historical Museum be somewhat unique, something that they can't gain in some other setting. The Historical Museum is relatively close to the schools. It doesn't require an extensive field trip, although it is a field trip from the schools. So, again, we try to market our programs and develop those programs to our strengths here at the Historical Museum, recognizing the needs that are out there, not only with public schools, but also parochial and private schools.
Okay, very good.
Yeah, just to follow up on your visitation, of that 13,000, how many of those were on-site and how many of those were off-site?
I don't have that information with me right now. I would say probably about a third off-site, or maybe less than a third, a quarter.
Of your total visitation or the school visits you're talking about?
I'm talking about your total visitation of 13,000. Is that 13,000 people that came through the doors of the museum? Or that's about a quarter of that are people that you took programs to rather than came to the museum?
That's correct. The 13,000 includes off-site as well as on-site. And some of those off-site programs also include programs in collaboration with Elmhurst Public Library, with Elmhurst College, and with other community groups. So it's not limited to grade schools or middle schools.
Yeah, very good. Okay, Ms. Berghager, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I'll wrap up by saying my comments are as follows. First of all, you have always made us very proud. The museum is one of the real gems in our community. It's what helps set Elmhurst apart from other communities. It's one of the reasons why people locate here. We have a town with a history, and as I've said in this position, over the years, there are a lot of nice communities in DuPage County that literally didn't exist in 1960, that were a result of a real estate developer and a subdivision went in and it was a town. That's not the case in Elmhurst, as we all know. Elmhurst has a deep, rich, very rich, long history, and I think it's our responsibility to do what we can do to nurture that history, to preserve that history, to present that history, to let people know how did Elmhurst get here? Why is it here? Why was it here so many years before other communities in DuPage County? Who was Mr. Glosson? What was he up to, and how did he live? And et cetera, just to name one old cherished family from Elmhurst history. So I think this is very important. I think it kind of goes along with the one-room schoolhouse. These numbers on the one-room schoolhouse are big. They sound very big. But we are now, we're a decade long into this process of purchasing and revitalizing the only one-room schoolhouse, to my knowledge, in DuPage County. And one that there are actually people, believe it or not, there are people alive in Elmhurst today who actually went there as children. And that's a unique thing. And to have them come back and be able to tell their stories and tell what it was like is really something very special. We've worked cooperatively with everybody we could think to work cooperatively with, particularly if they had an opportunity to bring either some actual funding or some other much-needed asset to the facility. By way of example, Bensonville and the water. We're going to reopen this facility, make it available to school children, ask them to come there and have a one-room schoolhouse experience. But when it was a one-room schoolhouse, there were outhouses out in the back. And for a variety of reasons, that just doesn't work anymore, not the least of which is ADA. And the need to get up and down stairs. So the facility needed to be reconfigured into ADA. So we had to work with Bensonville to bring water to the site. That's a much-needed asset. We worked with the church and the cemetery to gain access to a parking lot, another much-needed asset. And all they asked us to do was to pave it before it completely crumbles into dust. So I think that there's been clearly an attempt to leverage as many outside revenue streams and asset streams as possible to help bring the one-room schoolhouse to fruition as a dream that many people in our community have had for a long time, to be able to provide this wonderful asset, this learning experience, this cultural experience, this historical experience to not only the youth of our community, but to everyone in our community. And I'm really looking forward to seeing it come online in the fall. It's been a long time. And it was something that was put off for a number of years for budgetary reasons, for various things. And there wasn't an effort to stabilize the building and make sure it didn't deteriorate any further until we could get to it. And now the time has come. We're right within sight of it. We've invested a lot of money of it to date. Now it's just a matter of wrapping it up and getting it online. So other than that, I thank you very much, Brian. It's been great working with you. I've always enjoyed my time at the museum, and particularly the ice cream social after the parade on the 4th of July is a great day in Elmhurst, and I thank you and your staff for making it all possible.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay. Mr. Borchert, we're at 9:30, which is about where we thought we were going to be at this point. I would ask you to keep pushing us a little bit. We got some more work in front of us this evening.
Move back to our own city under city council, more direct control. Just had the library board controlled library and the foundation board 50-50 with the city museum budget. Now back to city operations on page 162 and 63. Next up is the legal budget, which
Okay,
is before
162.
you, 162 and 163 is legal budget. Mr. Kabiza, although the name tag says Mr. Spiroff, it is really Mr. Kabiza is here to answer questions. Same programs as the past. There are legal expenditures in other parts of the budget, but this is the general fund legal budget.
All right, very good. Any questions of either the city manager or Mr. Kabisa on this point? Alderman Moriarty.
The cost for legal services, does this include all the TIF funds too that are rolled up into this schedule?
The tax increment financing funds would have their own professional services, which include not so much legal, but other professional services. But if there are legal services in your TIF funds, they'd be in the TIF fund.
Does Kabisa bill some of the additional services through the TIF fund?
Only if they're working on a TIF project, yes.
Okay.
As an example, the Central Business District, the contracts for the DevCom, public-private partnership, for the Hurley site and the Thorn site did involve significant mortgage documents, legal documents, and city attorney's office was involved in that. And those fees were charged based on the agreement with the legal office on an hourly rate basis and charged to the utility, to the TIF fund.
So this dollar amount that we're showing of $520,000, there's additional funds or additional money being paid through the other funds that we have within our budget?
Yes.
Yes. Do we have a total as to how much we're paying out on that for legal services?
We have actual numbers, and that is in the quarterly consultant report that I've provided to the council for the last year. So in that report, total legal fees for Kabisa's firm is in that report. In here, in this budget, I would not be able to tell you exactly how much is being budgeted for legal. In the TIF funds, when we get to the TIF funds, you'll see lines that are professional services. In those professional service lines is our best estimate of what's going to be out there. They could be legal fees, they could be any number of other professional services, other consultant fees that we have out there. Yeah. This is the legal budget for the general fund.
Okay. Would there be any way that, you know, by the time when we look at the budget and we've looked at the whole budget, that we would be seeing, like, I guess when you're saying out of the quarterly review for particularly Kabisa, like right now, as of the third quarter, the total dollar amount is $425,000.
Right.
So that's the total dollar amount of all invoices paid.
Exactly.
Okay, so we don't have a full, what would it be in a year from now yet if we were to?
I can give it to you as of absolutely today what we have paid.
Okay.
And try and give you an estimate for what is, and that's what's here. We have an estimate for the year. We could try and give an estimate for that, just like for any other consultant fee, we could. And certainly I can give you anything from last year, which we've already provided, to sort of give you some gauge as to what's involved.
Is it just a follow-up? Maybe I can direct it to our legal counsel. With us going into these economic times, and our business overall in the city has certainly decreased in some of the reviews that you'd probably be doing. Do you see at all that any of the fees or the services provided by you will be decreased too, and consequently be paying out less?
You can see in this budget, we've decreased it by about 3.5%. We're going to try to cut back on what might be called discretionary legal services, meetings with staff and things like that we can avoid. But for the most part, our work is driven by the demands of the city. One thing you see in this budget is how much is spent for attorneys, and by the way, this isn't all our firm. There are Seaford Shaws in this, other law firms that work for the city. But the other thing you don't see in here is the fact that the legal budget generates funds. From these line items that you see here, there's probably $350,000 of revenue that we've generated as a result of these fees. So, for instance, in the defense of the liquor cases, we collect fines and costs, which should cover our costs. DUI prosecution, we generate a profit for the city on DUI prosecutions. This year, under legal fees and additional counsel, we collected probably nearly $200,000 in taxes and other fees and costs for the city. So the answer to your question, yes, we're trying to minimize what we call discretionary expenditures for the legal budget, but it's penny wise and pound foolish to save a dime and avoid and not then collect some money that's due and owe you. So this is as cost efficient as we can get.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Brand.
Thank you. City Attorney Kubisa touched on it, but if I can have further clarification. On page 162, the line item 3019, DUI prosecutions, it does show an expenditure or projected expenditure of $75,000.
Yes.
And if I look back at the police section on page 131, it was showing us expending, because that's how much we were going to have in the account, of $80,000. So as long as I can get some clarification, it seems like we're benefiting by $5,000 if I'm understanding this, but if you can clarify that, please.
What page are you, what revenue page are you looking at, Alderman?
I was looking at the expenditures on page 131.
Oh, okay, all right.
Line item 6075, which shows 80,000.
What you're looking at there is just the DUI Tech Fund. It's a very specific dollar amount. I believe it's, I don't know, maybe Chief could help me out here. I believe it's either $200 or $500 per prosecution.
Right,
that would be collected from the individual that's being prosecuted. That is a very specific fund to be used only for certain items. That is not the $1,000 or $1,500 fine that's being assessed to that individual. Those you're going to see in revenues under on fines. I think the line item is court fines. You will see it there.
Okay.
So that's a very small, specific item. We wouldn't get it if we weren't in court prosecuting. But it's not meant to cover these costs.
I believe the Finance Committee every year looks at the profit and loss on the DUI program.
We usually do it in the fall.
Last year was $70,000.
And I understand we're not doing this solely for an extra revenue stream, but I do know that previous years we did make a profit by doing this, so it was a beneficial program for us to pursue. That's why I wanted clarification this year, because it didn't seem to coincide of what I've learned in previous years. So thank you for that clarification.
Any other questions? Okay. Mr. Borchard?
Just keep following along. Claims is the next couple of pages, 164 and 165.
Anybody have any
Not
questions?
a lot of budget review opportunity with these are
Any questions? Okay, let's move on to senior services.
Senior services, page 166. This is an area where there's a reduction. We're pleased to report on with the Youth Commission, the city and the Park District, prior to that, the city and other public service organizations provided consulting assistance for the Youth Commission. The city and the park have agreed going forward to use the city website, and in that regard, some of the publishing that the Park District had a charge for the Youth Commission goes away, so there's I think a $10,000 reduction in the Youth Commission. A program enhancement that has been previously approved by the City Council is reflected here relative to the taxi program, shifting to Ride to Page, which between the handicapped and senior subsidy will provide an increase in expenditures of $37,600. It is a significant increase in quality of service. It is an increase in expenditure. At difficult times, it's a council's call on that, in that the council had earlier approved it. We provided it, put it in the budget. Has not been implemented yet. Anticipated to be implemented sometime midsummer.
Okay, any questions?
Thank you. I just want to make sure I understand this. So the line that says seniors taxi subsidy that's increasing, is that the Ride to Page increase? But yet there's a disabled taxi subsidy line, 6019. That's also increasing. Do both of those funnel into the Ride to Page?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, correct.
Any other questions? Okay, next, health services.
Health services, 167 and 168. We call it health services. It's provides for the contract program for the ambulance service, which is a contract program operated through the fire department. Significant revenues are received from the ambulance service provided, and then there's mosquito abatement provided under this general fund category of health services. We have anticipated a bit of a reduction in the mosquito abatement program. The contract provider will be going through the Public Works Committee, I believe, in the next month or two with a multi-year contract. Their current program ends, or has ended, so we've from a staff perspective, asked for a program that would provide for disease control, adult control of mosquitoes, significant larviciding to control the mosquito before they become an adult, and the emergency should there be an outbreak of the mosquito-borne diseases, which occasionally happen, not anticipating it, but the budget would allow for emergency sprays if that did occur. We would anticipate mosquito abatement adult sprays would be limited to nuisance control and, to disease control, and not do as much mosquito spray as in the past. There was mosquito spray on block parties with no charge. There was a charge built into the program for the city. We've asked that the mosquito spray program be made as minimal as possible and no supplemental sprays being provided to get a basic price for the general fund for this year.
Mr. Borchardt, how are you going to wrap that into the long-term contracts? Is there an ability to put that back on should finances improve in the future?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. If in the future revenues were such that charge for block parties was no longer deemed necessary and full service to block parties was resumed, that would be rolled back into the mosquito control program.
Okay. You lock in a unit cost at this time in the initial?
It's an approximate. There is certainly the contract provider knows the cost of doing the spray, and they keep a track keep a record of the number of block parties. Last year, I believe there was a couple of hundred block parties. So there was a significant expense that was part of the overall city carry of the general fund to support what I think is a very important program for the community, at community celebrations of being in Elmhurst, block parties.
Okay.
This year, the block parties will go forward, but with a permit fee.
Okay. Yes.
So if I understand you correctly, in this mosquito abatement number, this projected number will be lower because we're renegotiating the contract. So this isn't, this is a higher number than what we'll really see in the final budget. I mean, about how much lower do you expect this to be? Because this is still significantly higher than it was 2 years ago. The 07-08 year,
We would suspect it should be about 10%, at least 10% less, is what I recall and what I understand, is the contract provider is preparing to come to the Public Works Committee.
So when will we see that number in the budget going forward? We won't. We're going to approve this number.
Well, if we can get a firmer number, we'll report that so that we can make a lower budget if it's possible.
Because we're talking.
And that may not be possible because we're, I think, marching towards perhaps an April 6th final approval of the budget. So we will attempt to get a better number from the contract provider and so report that. This is certainly the outside number.
Well, doesn't it make sense for us to lower this projected number now and take a look at other, we've been concerned about other programs that have been cut completely, and if we think this is an inflated number by roughly 10%, if we knock $20,000 out of this budget line, then perhaps there are some other programs that we've completely cut that we might be able to revisit.
I will attempt to get an answer based on information from the contract provider by next.
Yeah, I think that Alderman Gutenkauf's got a good point here. I don't want you to take pull a number out of the air tonight for a reduction, but I think it's a reasonable thing to go to the service provider and say, it's budget time, I need this number. Give me the number.
We'll report next week.
And they've got to be, I'm sure at their office, they're dealing with municipalities all over the state, the Chicago metropolitan area. That same question is coming into them daily at this point. And we have a right to ask the question too, so. Alderman Leader, did you have a question or comment, sir?
Well, just kind of looking at these numbers, because they kind of bounce around, it occurs to me that a lot of this might have to do with the amount of rainfall. So if you have a lot of rainfall, you're going to get more mosquitoes. So it's kind of a tricky thing to estimate. But wouldn't that be a factor in this? You get a lot of rainfall, more mosquitoes, then there's more cost for mosquito abatement. And we've had a lot of rainfall here lately. And I'm just wondering, did we have a lot of rainfall, or was 07-08 fairly dry because the number was down?
It's rainfall. It's rainfall when there's warmer temperatures. The rainfall thus far isn't as much a factor, but it is going into the spring and summer. Rainfall is a factor. But we'll get the contract number and report back next week.
I think to your point, Alderman Leader, I don't know, Mr. Borchert said this already, I don't need to re-say what he said, but, when you have a big rainstorm like our last August event in August, that's completely different than a big rainstorm like we had 3 weeks ago in February. February, the mosquitoes are not an issue. In August, they are. You know that.
Right.
To your point, you're absolutely right. This is a projected number. We're going to fight mosquitoes based on what the actual experience is. But having said that, there is a component of this that is known, which is the charge for a block party and the number of block parties. And we can take those two numbers and put them together and reduce the estimate by that amount. Those numbers are more or less known.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
Okay, great.
Sure.
So, Mr. Borchert, please try to press, is this Clark Mosquito, by the way? Is that who this is?
Yes, sir.
Okay, press them for a number. All right, what do you got next there?
Next page is contingent, and as earlier suggested, contingent provides a contingency allocation for an event not otherwise understood or projected or anticipated for the staff to bring to the council, for the council to bring upon itself. Last several years, I believe, contingent has not been used. We've suggested to not have a contingent budget this fiscal year.
Do you think that's prudent?
It's not a good budget year.
I understand.
Absent the conditions that we're experiencing, I would definitely recommend that there be an ability to have a contingent line.
Okay. I could.
We need to be very disciplined.
I could play verbal tennis with you on this, but I think you're right. I mean, it's a judgment call on your best professional estimate. It's always been comforting to me to have a contingency fund there. I remember reaching for it on rare occasion over my time here. It's nice to have a contingency fund in there so that when we say, well, we got to address this problem and we'll use the contingency fund so we're not busting the budget, that's a luxury we can't afford anymore. So, okay.
Page 170, 71 is cable television. The city does enjoy the revenues of the franchise fees for Comcast and the franchise fees really by the state of Illinois franchising AT&T. AT&T then charges its customers. Elmhurst receives that franchise fee. They together go into the revenues that support the cable television budget. These are services provided by the contract, Jeannie Urich and her employed staff, and miscellaneous commodities, repairs, and maintenance.
Thank you. I see that you're increasing this budget $7,500 to televise more productions. What kind of productions have been added to the mix?
I know the major area is the symphony, which is receiving positive reviews through the cable casting of their events, and I believe they've actually financed the financing of one of the special shows themselves.
How many of these events is the city financing for organizations that aren't city departments?
I think the only contracted for cable casting, I think, was one symphony event. All the others are done by the city.
So we're adding one symphony event in this coming year that we have not done previously?
I don't know how many we're adding. I know that over the last year or two, there have been a number of symphony events that have been on cable. Mm-hmm. So that has been significant, and I know the Symphony Board would like more, but I don't believe all of the concerts are being televised.
I'm sure they're wonderful concerts. I'm sure people really enjoy them. I love going and seeing the symphony. I just question how we can justify doing this for the symphony, and how do we, in a tight budget year like this, the symphony is not a city department. It's an independent organization. There are lots of arts and culture organizations in our community that we could be working with to televise their programming. Why did we choose the symphony, and why do we keep doing it?
Well, there's a lot of productions that I don't have an accounting of in front of me that I think would be appropriate to look at and to compare what. I don't believe there's a lot of additional productions identified. The explanation was general cost increases and more productions. think it's a good question. I don't have the specific answer, if Marilyn could assist.
I don't have a specific answer to that, but the justification for this is our cable TV franchise fee revenue that we receive this year about $594,000. So somebody could make the case that every dime of that should be put into the cable TV budget. So that budget at about $100,000 is only using 20% of, less than 20% of the revenue that's coming in. So I think, and most of you probably know Jeannie Urick, there is not a more frugal person here. She prides herself on being within her budget, and she is in a very positive sense, a penny pincher, and has a great group of folks that she works with. And it was the symphony that came to her and said, we want you to do this. So it wasn't, we weren't out beating the band saying, please come and we want to video your event. It was them coming to us saying, we want you to do that. And it was just Jeannie and how she can coordinate all of her time.
I think another criteria that she used, is things that are supported by the city. By way of example, the Red Ribbon Week event is normally televised. That's not a department of the city, although our DARE officers get involved in that. Some of our other folks I get involved in it. It's not really a department of the city, but it's being supported with city funds. Another example would be the parades and the Memorial Day. As we know, those are, particularly like the 4th of July parade, is really thrown by the chamber, I believe, is the key entity that throws the 4th of July parade, but the city puts funds into it and supports it, and that's the point at which they decide that they're going to go ahead and make it part of the offering. So I think that their criteria is that there's been city support involved in it already. Sometimes that support is out and out cash, like a grant to the symphony. Sometimes that support is in manpower, like the Turkey Trot. The Turkey Trot is televised every year. Part of their theory, well, I wouldn't say their theory, part of my theory, I would ask you all to think about, part of what you're doing. I think I alluded to several times in the last month, I've alluded to that some communities have absolute out-and-out public relations departments, public relations directors. We don't have that here in Elmhurst. We never put that head count in, that job into the head count. We've never put that job into the budget. The cable television serves in a large degree as our public relations arm. It shows off the great things about our city. It shows off the Memorial Day parade and the service afterwards. It shows off the Elmhurst Symphony. It shows off the Dan Gibbons Turkey Trot and what a wonderful community event that is. It shows off the grade school and high school plays. It shows off the Park District. We go over the Park District and televise many events at the Park District that are really not Elmhurst Department events. So that's, although that would seem to be a logical place to draw the circle around what gets done and what doesn't get done, I think that in fact what gets done is a much broader palette and spectrum of what goes on in Elmhurst, and we offer it up to the cable television viewing community, which, by the way, if a lot of people know this, some people don't know this, Elmhurst cable television is viewed by something like 40 other communities. I don't have the list. The list changes from time to time as they rewire their system, but it goes out over a large area. So I hope that kind of sheds a little more infill on that issue.
I just have one more question.
Yeah, sure.
What else do the cable television franchise fees pay for? They pay for these programs. What else do they pay for? This come in as general revenue.
Yeah, the extra revenue goes into general unspent dollars, and cable goes to the general fund as fund revenue. And down the road, there's going to need to be a city investment in the I think it's called the institutional loop, that is done for, is originally paid for by the cable franchise. They're not maintained any longer by a serious way by the by Comcast. Going to have to be taken over by the city, but that's down the road.
Well, I want to hasten ahead that there is one other major thing that's covered from time to time, which is work to our infrastructure. When cable systems go in, like this Lightspeed thing that we see recently, or the Comcast cable first went in, they tore up a lot of streets and saw-cut sidewalks, and once in a while they get into repairing. I know that the cable in front of my house, on the other side, not my house, the other side of the street, broke. Gosh, it's 15 years ago. But my point is, I remember it broke, and they came and they figured out where it was broke, and they dug up the parkway in front of one whole house, and it was a big mess, and they go away and leave it for us to clean up. Well, how dare they do that? How dare they do that is that that's what the franchise fee is for us to repair and maintain the infrastructure that various utilities cause when they start doing work in our public right-of-way. They gain access to it by virtue of the fact that they pay this fee. So, very important. I think as the system has grown and matured and settled down, it doesn't seem to be something that we're spending a lot of money on, but it was an important part of the theory when the state allowed us to create that fee. So. All right. Okay, Mr. Borchard, next.
I know you suggested we try to be done by 10 o'clock.
You know, it's actually 10 o'clock right now, so, right? You want to stop? I think we should, this is the entire list, right?
Yeah, I think we would anticipate your approval of scheduling a committee, the whole meeting following the budget. For the budget, following committee meetings next Monday night. And there's a high probability we'll be able to finish to set up.
And we won't need the fifth Monday. And that'll give you another, if we press on tonight and got this done, you have some questions that folks have asked you, you need to come back with the answers, so we're going to need to come back anyway. So why don't we call it a night there?
If we ever stay late, we'd stay late next Monday to avoid using the fifth Monday, but if you'd rather work the fifth Monday, we could work the fifth Monday.
Quite frankly, Mr. Borchard, given what's on here, this is the kind of, we're on the downhill slope at this point, if I may be so bold. So we should be able to get that done. Okay, very good. Thank you very much for your presentation, for having the folks here that have helped us learn more about these various issues and line items in front of us. But with that, it's 10:05, so I need a motion to adjourn. Alderman Gutenkopf moves, Alderman Morley seconds. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, that motion carries.